everyone. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. We are so excited today. We are wrapping up our grant writing series. But again, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Hey, Kathy from Pennsylvania. Ohio's in the building. All right. Oh, they're coming in now. Okay. We have New York, Arizona, Minnesota, Idaho, Cali, Washington. Nice. Awesome. Welcome everyone again. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. We'll get started in like 10 seconds. Hello from Delaware. Neighbors, we're all here. All right. And I definitely recognize a few people who are returning. So welcome back. And thank you to those who are joining us for the first time. Again, we are excited to move forward with wrapping up our grant writing sessions. So we'll go ahead and get started now. If you are returning, you may have remembered that the first two sessions of this series is really focused on developing a comprehensive needs assessment and effectively telling your program story in your grant application. And of course, each session has been recorded, and this one is also being recorded, and they can be found on our website in the archive resources section. Thank you, Hillary, for sharing that link in the chat box. But again, all sessions are recorded and they are archived on our site. Now, this session, we are going to take a close look at some strategies on how you can implement family engagement into your program, but also think about those effective family learning and engagement opportunities that you can stay on top of throughout your programming, right? So, at this point, we're definitely thinking about why family engagement. Now, at this point in this series, well, there are a dozen of areas that we can focus on, like program management and operational plans, fiscal management, all of those things, but all of that can come later once you have been awarded. And so it's really important that we spend the time around designing intentional family activities, which is a crucial part in the planning and implementation of your of any 21st program. So before we jump into things, we're just going to take a quick moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Shanika Peck. I'm one of the senior TA liaisons on the 21st CCLC NTAC team. I'm super excited. I'm always excited to talk about family engagement because it's not just a touch and go kind of event. This is definitely a partnership that you should be establishing within your program and extend beyond that. So I'm so excited to talk about those different strategies. And of course, I highly encourage you all to share what your plans are around how you plan to tell what your family engagement pieces will look like, what you've done in the past, and what you are looking forward to. And I'm joined by Hillary, my colleague today, so I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself.
Yeah. Hi, Shanika, and welcome to all of our audience who took time to join us today. I echo what Shanika said around the value of family engagement and really the longevity and impact that those relationships can have to make a difference for your program long term. And that's why this work counts and needs to start at this very beginning stage of writing your grant proposal.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hillary. Now, before we get started, we will definitely like to take a couple of seconds just to reiterate our vision and mission for what we are supporting in terms of 21st CCLC NTAC. So our vision is to, of course, support all of our professionals in the 21st C community around obtaining knowledge and skills to implement programs that engage and empower not just our students, but our families, and making sure that we are building long-lasting successes as lifelong learners. And so that means our mission includes us providing best practices, evidence-based resources, and professional learning opportunities to build the capacity of all of our 21st CCLC stakeholders who are a part of the 21st C ecosystem here, in supporting our underserved youth and their families. And so that entails us covering a number of priority areas, such as addressing impacts of COVID-19, providing equity of access to resources, support students' SEL needs, fiscal compliance. We're also taking a heavy dive or heavy lift into supporting those academic focus areas, which definitely includes some STEM activities, but it's not limited to that. We're also talking about financial literacy, things that we can implement to align with the traditional school day, and so on and so forth. We're also looking at statutory and programmatic requirements. So we're talking about supporting that programs in rural areas, the implementation and evaluation of 21st CCLC programs, and the list goes on from there. So a lot of the things that we'll talk about today aligns with a lot of these priority areas. So speaking about like what we're going to talk about today, here are our objectives. Right, so we are going to review new family engagement activity focus areas and evaluation measures required for the grant. We'll also explore how to design engagement activities that meet the needs of families. And of course, we are going to identify some steps that you can take in weaving family learning and engagement throughout your grant narrative. Right, so a lot of the things that we are sharing today are strategies that you can implement to support your grant application and narrative, but also to help you with implementing intentional family engagement activities, right? Because of course, when we go into research, we know that it demonstrates that when families are involved, their children are not the only ones who benefit, right? The benefits definitely extend to other youth in the program, other family members, your programs, community, and even schools. So when we think about family engagement, we're thinking about supporting or increasing youth participation in our programs. We're also thinking about the benefits that our youth OST participants will gain, and of course, support program quality and the impact of family engagement, both at home, at school, and within your program. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start with a quick reflection activity here. So in the chat box, I would love for you all to share an interesting fact about yourself and how that fact has helped shape who you are as a person. So again, in the chat box, go ahead and share an interesting fact about yourself and how that fact has helped shape who you are as a person. Now, as you all go ahead and type away that fun fact for us, I would love to go ahead and start. I'll share. I am the first generation American in my family, which means I am first generation college student and first generation homeowner within my own family. And so a lot of the choices that I've made so far, ever since I've been a part of programming since middle school into high school, kind of was created on my own. I kind of made things up along the way. And at times I was actually teaching my mom and a lot of family members about the ways of an American, right? We definitely took some time to reevaluate our own vision of the American dream. So that's kind of where I am today. Hillary, I don't know if you want to go ahead and share something as we get some responses in the chat.
Sure. So one of the things that I was thinking about, Shanika, is that as I thought about what we were talking about today is multiple someones, let me be responsible for their kids. Starting at like 10 years old, I would go every Saturday to this family down the street and watch their kids because the family worked at the hospital. And it was not the first or last time that I did something with kids, obviously, like I still get to do this job today, but opportunities and experiences like that and many more over time certainly shaped the path I took, where I ended up in my career, the types of things I get to do, and the things that I'm passionate about.
So thank you for sharing. Seeing that brought some memories back. We had a lot of responsibilities at a very young age, right? And as a
Why
single
don't you
more
let us do
seniors,
that?
right? So I'm checking out the chat. Oh, wow.
Great answers in here.
Great, a lot of interesting facts. So Deanna, she climbed a mountain in Alaska. Wow. My hat's already off to you for climbing or hiking in general, but in Alaska, that's awesome. And that goes to show that she can do incredible things. Absolutely. What else? We have a lot here. The students in my building think I am really tall, but at 5'10" tall, I am the shortest in my family. Wow. It is a lesson on how all things are relative to your perspective. It's great insight. Thank you for sharing. Oh, they're all coming in here. Let me scroll back up to the top. Alicia shared.
Alicia, I was gonna say.
Yeah. I'm Puerto Rican, but no one can tell that by my looks and married last name. Fish definitely wouldn't tell that, be able to tell off the bat, which of course that ties into a lot of the assumptions that we can make, not just with ourselves and our colleagues and the staff that we may work with, but also with our youth and our families, right? So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Sandra was a latchkey kid. Okay, yep. Same with a single, oh wait, I'm losing it. There's a single mother, and I've spent my life trying to give back to kids who have needs and challenges that may hinder success, like me when I was young. Absolutely. A majority of a lot of the educators who are in this industry are paying it forward, right? By sharing our own experiences, but becoming the adults that we wish we had in these spaces to provide us some support at some capacity, right? Um, oh, there's a couple in
We've
there.
got some
The
more. We
time.
have Rhonda who says that I love studying about the Sonoran Desert growing up and still love sharing ecology facts and about the desert flora and fauna with others. Um, Diana, on that very much the same train you were just talking about, Shanika, that says, I was after school at summer camp for my brothers and cousins and creating that opportunity for others that we don't have.
Jeremiah shared, I'm a poet in my personal time, but most people wouldn't think so. That's a great outlet, right? A lot of times we have our own strengths that we can bring into program spaces and support our youth and families. Maria shared, I'm also an immigrant born in Cuba, and it has truly shaped my sense of working with students and families. Love working with our families and learning about their experiences and culture, right? Awesome. I love playing pipe organs. Wow, it's cool. And music lets me look at life as a symphony. That's beautiful. Okay, we have some people who are dual citizens. Thank you for sharing, Trish. And I think it has shaped the value I place on multiple perspectives and points of view. This was all amazing. Thank you all for sharing those interesting facts. And again, a lot of the things that we're sharing on a personal level ties into the work that we are currently doing right now. And it's also something that we should think about as we go ahead and design those intentional family engagement activities, right? It's important that we also keep in mind that our families are also bringing in their unique perspectives, their experiences, their cultures, their traditions. A lot of these things can also play a part in how we plan programming, especially how we implement our family engagement, right? So thank you all for sharing. Heather shared, I grew up doing activities in the woods, and my family and I are currently obsessed with foraging for and growing mushrooms. Very interesting, right? Awesome. Yep. And then a lot of the experiences that we have, Lisa, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that, right? A lot of the experiences that we've had growing up definitely plays a part in how we respond to our environment and how we respond to supporting our families there, right? Awesome. Thank you all. Again, thank you so much for your vulnerability and, of course, sharing those interesting facts. So, we're going to start with, why family engagement. And from the looks of it, we kind of already have this at, the front of mind, right? This is at the top of our list for a lot of our programs, right? So the last time that we met, we spoke about the purpose behind 21st CCLC programs and the beneficiaries or the stakeholders, right? That's including the students, our families, our schools, our communities. And so effective 21st CCLC programs facilitate these family engagement opportunities so that we are providing the support a child's academic and social development may need, right? So this is including offering more frequent and complementary experiences than those traditionally provided by the regular school day, right? And they are definitely more than just once a quarter special events, right? That's definitely not how we should see family engagement. This may be written into your grant application that you may have a number of events that you should meet with your program, but it definitely isn't a one-off or a way to tally how many events that you're hosting for your families, right? We are looking for regular interactions that create an opportunity for meaningful partnerships, just like what Hillary mentioned before, between not just our key institutions with, every students, but also with families, right? So we're thinking about the home, we're thinking about schools, we're thinking about communities. And so if we really want to ensure that continuity in our support, we're also thinking about how else we can support items that may carry over into our program spaces, like IEPs, 504 plans, or transition plans from the school day. And we're also thinking about how we can support those plans within our space, right? Because we are helping students with special needs or requirements of special support to receive the consistent services that are required for their academic and social success, right? So that's exactly what we're thinking about when we think about family engagement. Now, feel free to share in the chat box. We're going to do a lot of interactions through the chat box here, but we would love to hear from you. What are the benefits of family engagement for students and families? So you'll let us know about that in the chat. And then we'll go ahead and talk more about what family engagement looks like in our 21st CCLC programs, right? So more specifically, one of the key purposes of our 21st CCLC programs is to offer families of students served by our programs opportunities for active and meaningful engagement in their children's education, right? So that's including opportunities to support literacy or any other educational development. Now, according to ESSA Title 4B, Section 4201, which you can find on page 227. Thank you for dropping that link in the chat, Hillary. Many states include family engagement as a priority, which in some cases provide additional points for certain types of family engagement. So another resource around family engagement is that non-regulatory guidance, or also known as NRG, a resource that includes resources and recommendations, as well as examples of these recommendations. And Hillary went ahead and dropped the link to that non-regulatory guidance for you. Now, as you're thinking about this guidance, you will find different recommendations to offer programming around family financial literacy. There's health and wellness programs in there and strategies around workshops to support students in completing homework assignments. So definitely feel free to explore those two links that Hillary dropped in the chat. In addition to that, the 21st CCLC NTAC is also developing a companion guidance document with more examples. And of course, that is set to be released in phases over the next few months. So definitely, if you aren't already doing so, check back in on our website to see what's being updated and shared there. So As we go further into today's presentation, you will notice that we will be talking about deliberate steps that must be taken to determine a family's needs, building those relationships, and of course, designing intentional activities that are meaningful, engaging, and hopefully it'll empower our youth and families. Okay, so again, those two links have been dropped in the chat box. And then just a reminder, our website is 21stcclcntech.org for those resources that can help support with those recommendations. All right, so what we're going to do is just take some time to look at a framework that can be used around how we support family engagement. Now, there are a ton of different frameworks that can be implemented. We are going to kind of just pull out this framework in particular from Dr. Karen Mapp's dual capacity framework for family school partnerships, because it aligns a lot with a lot of our priorities for 21st CCLC programs. So in this framework, it provides a really good foundation for you to develop those goals, activities, and outreach for families in your grant application. Now, again, this is just one of the many examples of engagement frameworks, but again, we're just going to highlight that because it aligns with a lot of our priority areas when it comes to 21st CCLC programs. Now, in this framework, Dr. Mapp highlights the challenges for educators and families, the essential process and organizational conditions required for partnerships. It also identifies, why it's important to build the capacity of families and educators for engagement and the outcomes to be realized when educators, especially our OST staff, right, are empowered and families engage in different roles in the program. Now, when you're using this framework, you can effectively describe in your grant how all of these pieces will come together to build capacity and establish that effective partnerships with families that support student improvement. So this is going to look like a number of things, right? So for one, we are determining family engagement challenges for educators and families, right? So that allows us to ensure that there is an equity of access, right? That was mentioned before in our 21st CCLC programs for our grantees. We're also thinking about creating that process and organizational conditions, which is essential for effective implementation of 21st CCLC programs. So if you don't plan and prepare intentional engagement, that doesn't happen if you aren't planned and prepared, right? We're also using this framework to identify how we can build and enhance educator and family capacities in the 4C areas, right? And those areas are capacities, right? When we're thinking about skills and abilities, connections, right? Building a network, cognition, so shifting in beliefs and values, and of course, confidence. We definitely want to build self-efficacy among our educators and our families. And then last but not least, empower educators and engage our families. Now, this is a framework that I've used in the past as a lead teacher and intervention coordinator, because not only do we want our families to participate in our activities, but we also want to establish a relationship where they are in a place where they can step outside of their comfort zone and learn and want to learn more and feel empowered enough to advocate for what they would like to see or what they would like to participate in, right? So those are a couple of things there, and definitely feel free to share a couple of ideas in terms of the framework here. I do want to take a quick second to circle back to that question that we asked earlier, right? Around the benefits of family engagement for students and families, right? So let's see what we have so far. Deanna shared one of the biggest benefits of family engagement is promoting our after-school program in the community. Absolutely. Let me scroll down. And Hillary, if you see something that jumps right out to you, please feel free to chime in. Sandra shared, when we get to know and build relationships with families, we can support the entire family and increase the likelihood of success for all members of the family? Absolutely.
I think, Shanika, as you look at some of these answers that Deanna, that Sandra, that some others shared, a lot of them align with the things that we see in this capacity building framework, right? Deanna's talking about the benefit is promoting that out of school program or after school program to the community. And that's the place where the connections and networks stand out. And when we build family capacity around that, right, they're able to do some of that as part of that work. Or Jeremiah talked about when families engage, this gives students this sense of importance in their futures, right? Because there's this support system that's evolved, it creates that care and this development. And some of that has to do both with capabilities, with skills and abilities, but it also has to do with that cognition piece. It has to do with that shift in beliefs and values, what they think about themselves, what their families think about being possible for them, for the young people. And that's the piece where all of these forces, and as we think about developing them in both our staff and in our families, so that we're better impacting them, comes together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hillary. Just want to make sure I didn't leave anyone else out. So again, a lot of these things we're already like, we either already have an idea of it or we're already doing it, right? And so again, that ties back into what you are sharing in your grant narrative. Now, what we'll do for the remainder of the session again is to highlight those different activities and what this may look like. And again, we are going to encourage you to share in the chat box. So we'll constantly go ahead and check back and forth here and there. All right, so when we think about what the request for a proposal or the grant application is asking you to do, you're thinking about what you already know and what you need to know. And so that process, it'll take you, what will the process be for you to respond appropriately to that grant? And of course, provide any necessary activities and services for families. So your overall aim is to develop a family engagement plan that aligns with your feeder district or school, this whatever your feeder district or school's family engagement plans that are already being implemented. The RFP usually provides an outline of key activities, right? I mentioned this before, they may have a set number that you are required to provide in terms of family engagement, but of course we're focused on that relationship piece here, right? And that meaningful engagement. But you're also thinking about what your plans are in terms of how you're going to support the families of youth or students that are being served or that will be served in your program. And so these activities would be included in your family engagement. At a minimum, you should plan to host at least 3. And again, you can definitely double check your RFP to determine that number that they're looking for, but at least 3 educational workshops annually for families of participating students. And the focus areas for those workshops include deepening participating families' understanding of the connection between consistent school day attendance and future student success. Another focus area is offering families training on age-appropriate strategies and resources for supporting students' positive academic behaviors and or even social-emotional learning and well-being. And then that last focus area there is really about offering families the opportunity to gain skills and knowledge for supporting their child's academic needs. This includes literacy and any other related educational development, right? So again, if we're thinking about that framework from before or any research or evidence-based models as a guide to developing these and other activities, right? So for example, if we're thinking about incorporating an immersive family scavenger hunt, with a twist on traditional engagement methods. This can be an exciting way to engage your families, right? So imagine creating that scavenger hunt, where families may be solving clues, right? Or completing challenges. It may be physical, it may focus more on those mental pieces, but it's also being related back to their child's learning, such as probably incorporating some math problems, right? Learning about the environment, maybe some decoding puzzles, right? That represents those literacy skills. So that's just like a quick little activity that's playful and a collaborative approach. It not only aligns with what is listed or explicitly addressing your RFB requirements, but it also helps families engage in their child's academic journey in a fun, hands-on way that'll strengthen their understanding of how they can support their child's educational growth. Now, as we move throughout this session, there will be a lot of activities that we'll share. We highly encourage you to also share some if you have any at the top of mind. So what I'll do is go ahead and hand it over to Hillary.
So I get to talk you through a little bit about how you go from these great ideas that you have to something that, number one, is actually written into your grant proposal because you know that you need to include that. And number two, that's going to work because many times we try the cool thing that we think is really exciting for family engagement and no one shows up or it doesn't work or whatever happens. And so today we're going to walk through this process that you should follow as you are preparing and writing your grant to better understand the needs of your potential program families and think about how to develop activities for them, but also how to measure the effectiveness of those activities. Because one of the oftentimes perceived as challenges of 21st CCLC programs is we have to measure the effectiveness not just of the programming that we offer to our students, but to our families as well. And we'll spend a little time looking at the role of partnerships as we design these family engagement activities so that as you develop your grant and you plan what you're going to put into this proposal, that you have effective strategies for recruitment, for outreach, and for support. And so we'll walk through this process that you see on your screen. We'll talk about how to review need assessment findings, developing need statements, developing goals, objectives, and outcomes for our families, and then intentionally designing needs-aligned activities for the people in our programs, and then using the outcomes, the information that we gather from implementing those activities to assess what other needs there are, what potential partners are out there, and then how to take those steps forward to launch this when you receive your grant. And so it's about the intentional plan that makes family engagement part of what's effective for us. And so the first thing that we do, just like you talked about in the last session for your young people, is we need to understand our family's needs, right? We need to understand the pieces of conducting a needs assessment. And as a little bit of a reminder, you need to ensure that you're designing activities that are aligned to those needs. And you're going to have to spend some time digging into that data that you've collected to better understand the specific needs of families. And so that data for in the family context could look like this community or school level data. It's a big picture view of your community, of your local context. So this can include census data, information on crime, employment, demographic data, understanding of language. We've talked a lot about language in our early examples and what language or culture communities that are represented in your space. Things like graduation rates. Social service data is huge, mental health data, student performance data, right? Understanding your community space is an important part of being able to engage your families. I think back to my early days of programming and starting to understand my community. And one of the things that I learned very quickly is that, and and not because I did the research and did it well, but because I learned it on the back end, was that in my community, it is very common that most people don't have above a third grade literacy rate. So I'd send home these nice letters to families and expect them to read them, but I wrote them in my nice, formal, professional voice, right? That's going to inform that. And so it informs, and this research and understanding of family needs is going to inform all of the things you do, how you plan to communicate, how you plan to outreach. Then you want to look at that family and student level data. This is a closer look at the potential families in your program. This can be collected through surveys, through formal conversations with families, and it's especially important when you start to design these activities. The more our activity development is driven by this data, the more successful the outcomes and impacts will be. One resource that I'll point you to is we just last week held a live where we were talking about rural communities, and there was a lot of conversation around having someone who's embedded in your community who you use as a resource. They'd be a really phenomenal person to interview at this point, at this time, to say, hey, I'd love to talk with you about what your community needs. And so that live will be posted on our archive in the next couple of weeks. And so I'd encourage you to check it out. I just shared the link in there again. And then the last piece is family voice. It's what they want from your program, what activities they're interested in. And your surveys, again, can be used here, focus groups, one-on-one conversations with families. But this is where you need to dig into, where are those resources? What are they? It's also a place where you get a glimpse into what the challenges may be for your program design around family engagement and how you can better design those spaces and opportunities to support the programming that you're going to be thinking about. And so as you take all of this data, the way to help it not just become a lot of information in your brain or on paper, and then to be able to use it in a way that's effective, that decides this is how we're going to move forward, is to look at developing family engagement needs statements. So we're going to look at a quick example here. And we're going to assume that you completed a family interest survey since you attended the needs assessment session 2 weeks ago. I hope some of you did that. And you reviewed those findings and you developed some needs statements from this data you collected. So let's look at the example data. So the example data says 60% of program families reported on our family interest survey that they are most interested in improving their parent-child communication skills and how to support academic development at home. Well, then we're going to develop from there a needs statement, right? And maybe another needs statement would say something like, families are requesting enrichment activities that occur later in the day, right? They want something starting at 7 p.m. or they want something on the weekends. Whatever that may be, is looking at both the data around what they need and when those things need to happen, right? You may have a lot of families who work. I often had shift workers. That was very common. And so they weren't available to get to something. If I held something at 4:30 or 5 o'clock or sometime early that maybe felt more convenient for my staff and my team. A lot of times families who work have very limited days off, and it needed to be intentional to offer something on the weekends. All of those were things that we had to think about as we looked at the needs, the data and information from the surveys or other resources that we have. Then we use that information to develop family engagement goals, objectives, and outcomes. So last week, you reviewed how to use program SMART goals to intentionally design academic enrichment activities for students to be included in your grant. And so those SMART goals, just as a reminder, are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time-bound. And you're going to use that same process to develop family engagement goals, right? They shouldn't be an afterthought. They shouldn't be not as well developed, but instead, they should use that same process. So, your challenge is, what is a SMART goal that you could write in response to the example data that Shanika's sharing on the screen for us and the needs statement that we have that we're looking at. So I want you to start thinking, how would you write the SMART goal? What would it sound like? And share it for us in the chat. While you're thinking about that, so we know we've got that 60% of program families, right? They're interested in improving their parent-child communication skills. They want to know how to talk to their kids, and they want to know how to support those academics at home. Yet, we also know that we need them to be late in the day, after 7 p.m., or on the weekends. And so, how would you design a SMART goal that goes with that? Thinking about what specifically are you going to do? How are you going to measure it? What will be the timeline for this? Are you setting your goal too high? Is it something that's achievable? And is it relevant? We're just going to give you a couple minutes to write. Think about what your SMART goal is. This is your chance to practice it and get feedback if you're missing a piece, so that you don't make the mistake when you're writing your grant proposal, right? So that you're not missing one of those pieces when you actually get to doing the work of it. Okay, Deanna's first in, so we're going to take a look at hers. So 60% of families with regular participants will attend no less than 3 academic development and parent-child communication workshops by the end of the school year. So we were pretty specific about the types of workshops that we're offering, right? The academic development, parent-child communication. It's measurable because we know that the percentage is 60% of the regular attendings, right? So we know who we're talking about. These only students who are regularly participating in program, not the ones who just come one time and never come back, right? 60% might be achievable, might not be in your program context. I will acknowledge that that's something that's going to vary significantly based on your context that you're in. And then we are looking at the time-bound piece. We know that it's by the end of the school year, so there's a plan around when that'll be offered. So there's a lot of pieces there, right? We got most of the pieces there, and that's really what we're looking for, is to make sure that all of the pieces there and that they're connected with what you're looking for. I would encourage you to think about things like, okay, if we're saying no less than 3, then how many activities do you need to offer, right? And that, I'm not necessarily saying change the goal, but I'm saying if you're saying no less than 3, then you're probably going to need more activities than that, just in the nature of how life goes for families and young people. We got another example. So Shine will hold bi-monthly family enrichment activities focused on academic development and support, SEL, and parent-child communication, with a third on weekends, later evenings, and afternoons, with a goal of 50% of families participating in at least one event. Okay, so we got a lot of pieces there, and we may need one thing clarified. Are a third of the activities on weekends, later evenings, or afternoons? I don't know. Sandra, you feel free to clarify that for us, or Shanika, you think no? You think it says something else? She's thinking.
That's the total, right? I think it was mentioned like 3 activities total. So the third activity will either be on the weekends, later evenings,
Or
afternoons,
okay,
possibly.
perhaps. Yes, Dave Maza, our producer, can give you access to unmute. Dave, can you let Chandra unmute for us?
Oh, thank you, because I couldn't find the best way to write it. So I wanted to split up the time frames by like a third of them would be in the later evening, a third in the afternoon, and a third on the weekends. That's what I was trying, and I couldn't find the right words.
Got it. Okay. I absolutely understand what you're saying now. That's just like a piece to work through and clarify. It could be a third of the events happening on weekends, a third on evenings, and a third on afternoons. So like just add a couple more words in there and you could clarify that so that that makes sense. Absolutely. And that gives a very clear picture of like how we're going to make sure we meet all those family needs and matching all of the pieces together. So I love that. Shanika also popped up there for us our example SMART goal, but feel free to take a look at that. But you all shared some great examples in the chat. So we're going to just continue to think about, you know, being intentional around setting those SMART goals, right? And then making time to work through them. And with those goals developed, you then have to think about objectives and outcome measures because goals in and of themselves aren't going to be sufficient as you write your grant proposal. And so oftentimes we see things in our grant request for proposals or notice of funding or whatever it's called in your state, that in those pieces, in those requests for proposals, you will see that the state has set some objectives, right? And so a statewide performance goal or objective may state something like at least 65% of pre-K through 12 families will attend at least one family engagement event. And so then your responsibility is to ensure that you develop local or program level objectives and outcomes that are going to contribute to your state's performance goals. It's very important that you're lifting up and supporting that because really what happens when you think about it big picture is everyone, all of these programs in some way, although you have your specific goals, are supporting state level goals, and the states are looking for people who are supporting those goals. And then the states are supporting federal goals related to the 21st CCLC programs. And so when you think of it like that, then you're intentional in aligning and making the connections all the way through your proposal to do that. And so if you're going to support a potential statewide performance goal with your local level goal or objective, then what you're going to do is you're going to think about the total number of families you intend to target, and then how you're going to collect data to track progress and report on the achievement of those program outcomes. So I want you to take a look at our example statewide performance goal. And I will tell you that this is actually a statewide performance goal in a state. And to not cause confusion, I will say it is probably not your state, but this is an example from a real state. And then I want you to look at the program level SMART goal we shared earlier that Shanika had up on the screen. What are some objectives and outcomes that you could establish for your program? What would an objective or an outcome look like? So be thinking about what that looks like. We'll give those fingers a second to type, to be thinking. So Deanna's thinking about those family literacy workshops, right? That we would support some of that work, some of those needs that we have, right? And if our state is saying, hey, family engagement's really important to us, and that literacy is a need in your community, right? My example said that if you're my personal example was I have families who primarily read under third grade reading level. And so thinking about how to connect those things together is an important piece of it, as long as I'm also pulling in families' interests, families' voice. Also, our producer is reminding us that if you would like to unmute and answer, feel free to use your raised hand function, and we can allow you to share some of those pieces or resources. And so we want to make sure that we take those goals and we use them to determine our objectives, what we will aim to do, and our outcomes, what we want to see change as a result of the effort that we've put in. And so we build that piece out. Casey says, honestly, we're going to look for some company to come in and hire them to come in and work with the families and offer this kind of opportunity. And Casey, I would say that's absolutely fine, and may be a good design for your grant, as long as you've done the needs assessment, you've really looked at it, and it's still your responsibility to develop those outcomes, those goals, those outcomes and objectives, so that you have that place and space to do that. And so then we start thinking about the activities, right? We want to start thinking about what it looks like to really lean into those different activities that we are considering based on outcomes, based on objectives that we have, where we are measuring the work that we've done. And having developed these goals, these objectives, we then are really ready to dig into this piece of the work. And so your engagement plan for families may include skill-based and enrichment activities. They may include shared family and student activities. They may include leadership activities and resource linking. Shanika was talking earlier about Dr. Karen Mapp's dual capacity framework for family school partnerships. And these 4 areas that educators can build and enhance family capacity, capabilities, connection, cognition, and confidence around. And we want to make sure that we're putting those and aligning those with what we're planning for our families. And so as we're intentional about doing that, we can create this space where we're supporting the skills, knowledge, and resources that families and the educators who work in our programs have, and that we're empowering them to engage in this educational process, right? Because offering the one-off events isn't going to make long-term change for families. We know what makes a difference for our students is that they're in our space every day. And many of those same things are what work for adults. The second thing I would say is connection is what highlights the importance of establishing and maintaining these strong relationships between families, between educators and the communities. And when we address connections, we recognize that partnerships like the ones that Casey is talking about can be really effective. But I will also just comment that that doesn't mean that staff who are in the program, who have the opportunity to interact every day with families, get to take the hands-off approach to families. Oh, that's someone else's job. Be intentional about how those connections get made, because families will come to hear some really impactful speaker, but they won't come if they don't have the relationship that says, no, this is going to be something that's really meaningful and not just another thing to do on my agenda. Cognition is that focus on fostering that deeper understanding of learning and development of families. And this is a place where we can share insights into understanding child development, how kids learn, right? The impact and how to develop routines and practices at home. And confidence really emphasizes the importance of building that in our families as well as our youth. You know, my own experience says oftentimes families come and they don't have confidence that they know how to navigate the systems, right? And whether that's school systems or community systems, that they don't have confidence that they are seen as having anything to bring to value to your program, to your space, to your community, right? Sometimes they don't have confidence in things like even how to express themselves to the staff who work in your program. I'm thinking about language again, right? But overall, when we provide a wide range of activities, it allows us to create that interest that we need to get families in our door. It allows us to match the type of activity that we're planning to the identified need, and then to meet the diverse needs of students and families while we're still achieving our SMART goals. And there's really many types of things that you can do to make this happen. And so Shanika's going to talk to you more about some ideas. And some of you have already started to share ideas in the chat, but please share more.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hillary. And so what we're going to do is spend some time around how we can plan for and implement a family engagement plan that has a good mix of these different activities. So like what Hillary mentioned before, those different areas in terms of the types of activities that we can implement, we definitely want to keep in mind how we can cater to that holistic development of our youth and families. So this may include incorporating activities that are considered skills-based, right? So these are the activities where we are helping the adults attain new knowledge and skills. This may look like parenting workshops, ESL classes, workforce development, right? That's a lot. Those are a number of things that even myself have implemented in my during my time as a lead teacher in an extended year-round boarding school. You may also have enrichment activities where you are providing experiences for adults to find something that's engaging or stimulating and enjoyable, right? So health or fitness classes or clubs, potlucks, paint and sip. And of course, please feel free to share because I'm pretty sure that you are probably already planning these types of activities or have implemented in the past. Another activity type is family student shared activities that allows our family members to support their child's learning and development in new and engaging ways, right? And then there's leadership, which is definitely not the least, right? So we have leadership listed here. And of course, these leadership activity types are really focused on how we are empowering our families by engaging them in leadership and decision-making roles. So they may be a part of your program planning team, or you may have opportunities for them to volunteer to support your program space. The other activity type that can be tied into any one of these four areas is the resource linking activity type, right? So I see that a couple of us have already shared in the chat. Deanna shared that we are offering parent guardian workshops this year for families who need support because they are not in traditional family settings, right? Meaning grandparents, same foster care providers, families who have adopted, extended families who are caring for a child. This is a need based on school surveys and guardian conversations. That's awesome work. And I'm glad that you are tying in that data piece, right, around what the needs are and what you're going to do to follow up, right? Definitely have experienced that. Casey asked, does anyone have an example of a parent survey to ask Ooh, I lost it. And then we definitely do.
I'm
Oh,
gonna find it. I'm looking for
okay,
it right
got it.
now.
Got it. So Casey, Hillary's going to go ahead. Once she finds it, she's going to share it with you. There are a number of resources that are already available to you. If you take a look at our site, especially the archive resources, you'll definitely be able to find additional toolkits and tools there. Maria shared Saturday Academy program that provides workshops and community partners that provide information on their services. That's great. And that's something that I've done in the past as well. Sometimes we realize that once we've identified those needs that families are looking for, we can't always provide all of those services. And so that's where it's really important that we form those different partnerships so we can tap into those local resources that are available to our families, right? So again, that activity type is that resource linking that I was talking about that you don't really see here just on the screen. Sandra shared all of our events connect with resources. Awesome. So you're doing a mixture of those two different activity types, right? We're taking the next step and helping them enroll or sign up for the resources, since that is often an obstacle to actually utilizing the resource, right? Sometimes they don't know what's already out there that can support them. So that's great that you're taking those next steps. Oh, awesome. Great. I see a great example of a partnership here in supporting those family engagement activity types. We got a grant from AT&T to expand what we offer in these events. That's awesome, right? These are some things that we definitely need to keep in mind as we move forward with supporting these different activity types. Now, in the beginning, we've identified those 3 focus areas for family engagement. We're going to circle back to that and think about the activity types that these focus areas may fall under. Or you'll start to notice that a lot of the focus areas can a plan around these focus areas can require us to mix these different activity types, right? So that first focus area was around educational workshop, where we are focused on deepening participating families' understanding of the connection between consistent school day attendance and future student success, right? So we're thinking, which activity type would this focus area fall under? And I believe some of you've already shared some examples of this focus area, right? So again, we're thinking about which activity type would these workshops, that when we're thinking about workshop 1, would fall under, right? So again, those activity types that we're talking about are the skills-based activities, the enrichment activities, shared family, student activities, leadership activities, and we're also thinking about resource linking. So in terms of this focus area, where we are deepening the participating family's understanding of the connection between consistent school day attendance and future student success, what activity type would this fall under? And you can go ahead and let me know in the chat box. One that come to mind, Hillary, is skill-based activities can definitely support this focus area. And when I say skills-based activities, I'm thinking about my work that I've done with families outside of the classroom and during residential programming. So there were times where we would host workshops around building healthy habits in the home. And so we focused on helping families create daily home routines, right? This is something that we always encourage teachers to do in the classroom and programs to have, right? It's really important that we have routines. We provided a workshop for families to create their own routine so that they're preparing their youth to be prepared for their attendance or participation in the school day and your program. So this may look like what the nighttime routine should look like, what dinner routine should look like, what are some things that you can have in place for when you wake up in the morning, right? What should your child be able to do independently, or what they need help with in terms of their routine, right? So that is a skills-based activity that can be implemented under this first workshop. Awesome. Sandra shared SEL and academic support help students to overcome negative thoughts about school because their needs are being met and feel more successful and want to attend. Absolutely. And they want to attend. That contributes to that school day attendance, right? But also you mentioned the SEL support, right? Because that will, of course, play into the future student success. And you know what, Sandra, I'm going to go ahead and pull up that second focus area because that can also fall under there, right? So that means we know that skill-based activities can support this second focus area where we're offering families trainings on age-appropriate strategies and resources for supporting students' positive academic behaviors and or social emotional well-being. So thank you for sharing that. There's a number of different ways we can address this focus area. So again, it's skills-based. And then this is kind of already shared in that focus area, resources, right? That goes back to the activity type around us linking resources for our families, right? So Sandra, I'm just going to go off of what you shared with, social emotional support. If we're thinking about a particular activity, we may combine those two things, right? So you may have a workshop around effective communication and conflict resolution where we are helping families learn how to use I statements. Students also are involved with that because that's something that a lot of school day professionals are implementing in the classroom. And so this becomes that family and student kind of activity here, right? And of course, if you're teaching them those skills to effectively communicate with their child, of course, you want to share those resources. So the resources may look like guides. It may look like emotional regulation apps, which there's a ton of them out there by now, right? You may also tap into some local resources to help support the communication or the transfer of knowledge once they've participated in this skill development. Right. And again, feel free to share in the chat some examples, but those are the two activity types that I'm definitely seeing with this focus area, right? That skill-based activity and the resource linking as a type. That third focus area that we've identified, earlier. There it is. Harvey shared make and take activities. Yes, I love those, right? Jewelry, picture frames, scarves, etc., are great ways to bring students, parents, and family members together. Staff can utilize this quality time to discuss relevant educational and other topics, right? Get them in the door, right? And keep them there. They have a takeaway. Those pieces, those picture frames, scarves, jewelry, they can be used as a reminder of whatever skills that were covered. So you may have a bracelet that kind of takes you through those different steps with conflict resolution, right? Or how to use that I statement. And it's a reminder for both the child and that family member. So that's a great takeaway, right? And that's also a resource that we are producing for them. In terms of this third focus area, again, we're focused on offering families the opportunity to gain skills and knowledge for supporting students' academic needs, including literacy and related educational development. There's definitely a number of activity types that would fall in this focus area. So definitely let me know in the chat, right? So again, will it be skills-based activities, enrichment activities, shared family student activities, leadership activities, or even resource linking that would fall under this third focus area here, right? And I'm pretty sure you are already typing away, sharing some examples, because some of these examples that you've shared so far in this chat can be applied to this focus, this third focus area, right? So just to go back to what was shared about discussing relevant educational topics, you may be thinking about skill-based activities here. You can definitely incorporate some shared activities, especially if we have both families and students in the room. You can talk more about supporting their academic needs here, especially with literacy, right? We've seen a lot of great things being done with programs around literacy. I've seen programs implement fall literacy fair, where they're tying into like those aspects of fall. They have the farm stands, the different outdoor activities, but they're tying in like comprehension puzzles and phonics games as a part of this fall festival, right? And then again, you can also tie in that resource linking, and definitely let us know what this activity type could look like in this focus area, this third focus area, right? Because again, in all of these three different focus areas, we can have a mixture of these different activity types, right? Is there anything?
Shanika, I'm thinking about those older students, and so many of the examples we've given have been for our really young ones, but this third one could look like a financial literacy course that maybe it's shared, maybe it's skill-based, maybe it's talking about the FAFSA and like how to apply for financial aid, right? And just having that conversation, not just with young people, but with the families, or bringing in someone from the school day, because sometimes school day personnel can be intimidating, and out of school time staff can be much more approachable. And so just creating that connection to, hey, like, here's the guidance counselor and who your student should be talking to and how you do this. Oh, Sandra, I know programs that love Dreambox and that they love the way they engage families and young people. So I will echo that that's a great resource and ways to connect families with connect with families.
Absolutely. Heather, I'm glad you chimed in, because that made me think about programs that are prioritizing college and career readiness, right? This activity may also look like you helping families and youth apply for jobs or learn about the job application process. It says academic needs, including literacy. We can tie in math as well. Understanding a pay stub, right? Budgeting, financial literacy can also be tied into this a third focus area. So thank you. Absolutely. And of course, with our older youth, we're thinking about their commitments. Money sometimes gets them in the door, right? So if they can learn, use your program to learn more about their earning potential or anything along those lines that will get them in the doors along with their families, because of course you may have family members who are also looking at ways to advance in their own careers or looking for ways to increase their earning potential as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind here. Now, we're going to move forward. And again, feel free to continue to add in the chat box and we'll circle back to you. I do want to add here, according to the National Association of Family, School, and Community Engagement, that high impact family and community engagement is collaborative, culturally responsive, and focused on improving children's learning. So if we pull all of these key ingredients that we've discussed so far, this will help us to create that high impact family engagement plan for your potential 21st CCLC program. So in this plan, it'll include that cultural responsive and inclusive strategies, right? So we're recognizing the value of our learners and their families' cultural beliefs and practices, and we're drawing upon them to inform our program and activity development. We're also enhancing self-advocacy and bridging that home and school experiences. Now, we're also thinking about including those inclusive strategies, right? And so that must resonate with our families, with the families of our students from various subgroups, right? And this is also identified in ESSA. So we kind of touched base on this in the last session, and also we brought it up earlier today, I think. But this may include families of students from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, students with disabilities, our migrant and immigrant families, our English language learners, right? The list could definitely go on. And as you dig more deeply into your surveys and learning more about the population that you plan on serving, this will help you to diversify the realities that you will have as part of your program family, right? The second area is really focused on how you will implement all of these activities with fidelity. So whether you are conducting these activities yourself, or like someone mentioned before, if you are hiring someone or subcontracting someone, an outside company, you definitely want to stay on top of how these plans and activities are being implemented with fidelity, right? So you're definitely outlining any large group activities. You're also considering the small groups based on, the needs. You're also thinking about that one-on-one support or actions to increase collaboration and engagement. And, oftentimes like these activities may be implemented on a weekly basis, maybe monthly. Some of you are already thinking about quarterly activities, right? So definitely think about how your plan around increasing engagement among family members, right? This could be like goal setting talks and helping them to see what's in it for them to also participate in your program's offerings. And of course, I'm going to go back to this fidelity piece here, right? Uh, you definitely want to make sure that you are able to build the capacity of your staff. Again, if your staff or yourself is implementing these activities, but this may include you reaching out to school day staff or any other collaborators or potential collaborators in your community or local area, because we definitely want to stress that partnership piece. Then that last area there, assets and strength-based approaches, right? Remember from the very beginning of our session, we talked about what families are able to bring their unique perspectives or experiences or culture. You definitely want to bring that into your program as a strength. And of course, help them to determine like what parts of your, you will use that to inform what parts of your needs assessment will, eventually impact your overall program offerings, right? Because of course, we definitely want to achieve any overall student progress or student outcomes, as well as our family outcomes. Now, we talked about a lot of different things here. I definitely want to add another piece here. And we do have, we've conducted a PES interview. And those of you who may have participated or, attended one of our lives, we most certainly conducted an interview with a family engagement specialist from a 21st CCLC program in Texas. And they talked about what this work looks like in their program. So what we're going to do is take a peek at this interview with, and Hillary, please remind me of the family engagement specialist name. I believe it's Maru Castaneda. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and play that video for you.
Now it's time to hear a little bit from our guests today. We're going to start with Maru. And so, Maru, my first question for you is, how do you make sure that all youth and families feel welcomed and included in your program?
Well, first of all, we train our site coordinators to be prepared to all kind of people, to bring, they made them feel welcome. Every time, every meeting that we have is repeated. They need to know that they work with this diversity population in their programs, and this is very important. The second one is that grade the children all the time, grade the children, no matter what. Say good morning, good afternoon, bye, simple words. The other one that I have is like, be physically present. Sometimes me as a family engagement specialist, people, because I am the only family engagement specialist for 10 schools, so sometimes I cannot be there in each school every time. But when I visited, I want to be sure that I say, you know what, this is my name, and as an immigrant, I can understand their barriers. I can understand what are the challenges. I understand what their feelings. So I try to make them feel welcome. I try to make them feel that they will have support from us. We offer ESL classes. We offer different kind of resources for the families. But what you said is very important. We need to have, we need to be sure that the people feel the sense of belonging in the school. Some people, sometimes they visit the school and they say, nobody pay attention to me. They don't know my name. They don't know even how many children I have. Well, this is the point. To be sure that everything is perfect. Also, my last point, to be sure that everything is okay, we have a surveys. after each meeting or each event, family event, we send surveys for the parents and students and ask them, how do you feel? Do you feel welcome in the meeting? Do you feel welcome in this event? What do you suggest to improve these meetings in your school? So that helps us to improve every time that we have this contact with families and students in the school.
Maru, so what are some of the things you've heard families say on those surveys?
Well, sometimes they said, I feel shame because I don't speak the English language, of course. But they said, well, I feel welcome for this teacher. I feel like sometimes I am not in the position to say hello to everybody because I don't speak English. Or I feel they feel, I mean, in the survey, because they are anonymous, so they don't write their names. They are express what exactly they feel. And definitely the position for the people who doesn't speak the English language, they feel fears that they said, oh, how I will show up, how can I communicate with the staff, with the teachers, with the people in the after school program and in the school. So when we see this one, we put in more in, we try to put in their shoes. Okay, this happened. So what we can do, we as a program, we have a meetings and say, okay, let's go to have some ideas. What kind of activities we can do with these families and to make them feel integrate in the school. So, and that's very helpful for us because we can try to build some classes, events, or something to help them.
Awesome. And so you can definitely watch the rest of this recording from our live Voices of Many Enriching OSC Programs with Multilingual Learners on our website. Thank you, Hillary. Hillary just dropped a chat to the recording so that you can watch the entire thing there. Now I'm realizing the time right now, so sorry. Ooh. And I understand that a lot of you may have to step away for your programming. So our producer is going to go ahead and drop a feedback form link in the chat for us as we kind of move through the rest of this session. So again, before you head out, please go ahead and take a minute or two to complete our feedback form. So as you develop a family engagement plan and calendar, because again, we want to make sure these interactions are meaningful and we are supporting a lasting partnership and relationship with our families, we want to be very clear on the priorities already outlined in your state's RFP or grant application, but you're also thinking about other activity types like what we brainstormed earlier and discussed earlier that can be included as a part of your narrative, but it's also in alignment with the goals of 21st CCLC programs, right? And there is evidence that, they will address the needs of your program's families. So we definitely want you to think about these just two questions really quick, right? Ask yourself, are these activity types and related activities already included in my district and school family engagement plans? So again, you are going back to the school day and seeing how you can support what's being implemented, right? We definitely want to think about how those plans can be supplemented through our program. A second question to ask yourself is, what other activity types and high impact activities not get covered should you include based on program needs and goals, right? Again, we definitely want to make sure that we are providing as many services and resources or opportunities for our families to engage so that we can go ahead and make sure, we're clear with how we can support them, right? Now, what I'll do is we'll go ahead and pivot over to how we can create a plan for outreach for our families. So I'm going to turn it back over to Hillary to take care of us for the remainder of the session.
Thanks, Shanika. So with the best planned activities, you will need to outline in your grant application how you will build that relationship with families throughout the grant implementation period. And relationship building starts even at this stage as you're outlining that grant, right? As you think about the program design, as you think about the goals, as you think about the activities and the evaluation measures, those families who you sat down and interviewed, who you met with, they may become your biggest advocates. But a sound outreach and marketing plan helps you cultivate those relationships. And you need to think about your program setting, and you need to think about your communication channels as you work through that. So some questions that you should just be thinking about are, will your program be in an urban, a rural, or suburban setting? And then with that, what needs come as part of that? So are there specific language needs? Are there transportation needs? Are there other kinds of barriers that you need to be thinking about that your location is informing? I think about things like, I have had times and seasons where families are hesitant to go to school, right? They're hesitant to go to that school because of, in my experience, it was because of their immigration status, but they were willing to come to a community center or somewhere else where they felt comfortable. And so being aware of that dynamic, being aware of, my families are driving from 40 minutes or more to get to the school because of the distance that they are from the place where we hold our programs, and designing that and thinking about that in your plan so that if your event ends at 9 o'clock at night, because you started at 7, because that's what families wanted, that now are they not getting home till 9:40? And then these kids need to go to bed and be ready for school, right? All of those things come into your design. Next is thinking about preferred communication channels. Based on your setting, what do families prefer? Do they need to get all of your messages auditorially instead of in writing? Do they use things like school-based apps that they're familiar with from the school day and that you can piggyback on and carry through on? Or do you find that a lot of your family switch phone numbers all the time, but you can always reach them on WhatsApp? Those are real questions to ask families, and then to get to know and use that to inform your practice and how you're going to communicate with them. What languages does written communication need to go home in, right? And then thinking about your marketing plan, right? Use what you know to develop a plan that's going to resonate with families and that keeps communication lines open so that families come to your program, but not just that they come and they enroll their students, but that they stay engaged. This can be time consuming, especially if you start to realize that communication needs to be personalized, and it probably will need to be, right? You will probably need to assign somebody to stand at the pickup door and talk to families, or walk the pickup line and talk to families, or ride the bus home with students and talk to. I don't know what it looks like in your context and your space. That's why we do this work of the needs assessment, to figure it out, right? But all of those strategies are an important part of this work, and you need to plan for it now. Because if you realize you're not able to connect with and communicate with families way down the road in your grant, you've probably not put it in your budget. You've probably not planned the staff who are going to lead that work, right? You've probably not thought about that as a true component of what your 21st CCLC program is. And we can plan for that now at the grant writing stage so that we effectively do it in the long term of developing our grant and grant plan. If you'd like to learn more about marketing, one of the things that I'd encourage you to do is on October 30th, we are having an event called Marketing Magic, and we're going to talk about ways to improve your marketing within your 21st CCLC program. It is a huddle, so 30 minutes, real quick tools and resources that we'll share with you around this, as well as just a chance for you to ask some questions about ways that you're thinking about this. And so I think one of the things that we should be thinking about is just how you weave family engagement throughout the proposal, right? And so some common parts that you'll find in your grant application is a program abstract, right? Where you'll need to describe how the program meets the needs of everyone that the program serves. And so that's not just the needs of students, that's the needs of families. That's where that needs assessment comes in, right? And the next piece is that it's the needs assessment. Family needs aren't unrelated to youth needs, and they shouldn't be thought of as like these separate items, but instead think about the examples we looked at today, where families want to support students' needs, and sometimes they just don't know how. They don't have the resources. And so whatever you're planning should directly connect to the identified learning needs of students and the identified needs of families. And we want to be able to identify and describe the intercept between these needs well in our grant proposal, so that people understand that what we're doing for families isn't separate from what we're doing for students. And then the goals and objectives. Take your time, write those SMART goals, right? That's what helps you make the case for your program. You can say this percentage of parents or family members or whatever language you're using will target to attend each of these educational workshops, and you'll get them to participate in this engagement activity. And then finally, the program design as a whole, right? Families play a significant role in improving student academic and social outcomes. And that's something that we clearly need to explain in our proposal and make sure it's just woven through all of the pieces of work that we do in our programs. And so don't forget about it when you think about how you'll administer your program, how you're going to evaluate that information, how you're going to communicate, right? All of those pieces need to come together to complete that effective program design. And so as we wrap up and we're hitting the end of our time, I'm going to ask you one more time to complete our feedback form for today's session. Please reach out to us with any questions at info@21stcclcntac.org. You can stay informed about what's going on by signing up for our newsletter or scanning the QR code on your screen. Please follow us on X or LinkedIn to see what we're up to, what we're talking about. And one more time, I'm going to say, please fill out the feedback form. It's very important and meaningful to the work that we do and how we improve our practice, right? And look at what the needs are of those that we get to work with, which is all of you. Shanika, it was a pleasure to be with you today. And a pleasure to have such a wonderful group of people thinking about effective ways to engage families.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for participating and, of course, sharing your great best practices around family engagement. So thank you so much for, again, participating and just collaborating with us today. So thank you.